Paddington and the Grand Tour by Michael Bond, illustrated by R.W. Alley. One morning, Paddington answered the doorbell at number 32 Windsor Gardens, and to his surprise, he found his best friend, Mr. Gruber, waiting outside. "I've decided to treat myself to an outing, Mr. Brown," he said, "and I was wondering if you would care to join me." Paddington was very excited. He always enjoyed his days out with Mr. Gruber, and he didn't need asking twice. In no time at all, he returned with his suitcase full of marmalade sandwiches ready for the journey, along with Mrs. Bird's umbrella, in case it rained. They hadn't gone very far when Paddington spotted a bench. "Perhaps we ought to eat our sandwiches now, Mr. Gruber," he said. "If it rains, they might get wet." While they had stopped, Mr. Gruber showed Paddington some photographs of the places he wanted to visit. "I thought we might go on what's called a hop-on, hop-off bus," said Mr. Gruber. "You can come and go as you like, so it's possible to see lots of different sights with only one ticket." "I don't think I've ever been on one of those before," said Paddington as they went on their way. "It sounds very good value." But as they turned a corner and Paddington saw the waiting bus, he nearly fell over backwards with alarm, for part of the roof was missing. "I think the driver must have gone under a low bridge by mistake," he exclaimed. Mr. Gruber laughed. "Don't worry, Mr. Brown. It's made that way so that the passengers have a good view of the sights. If you wait here and form a queue," he continued, "I'll get the tickets. Then we can make sure of seats in the front row." "That's a good idea," said an inspector. "The early bird catches the worm, and I'm expecting a large party of assorted overseas visitors any moment now. Perhaps I can interest you in one of these booklets telling you all about the trip," said the inspector. "It comes in lots of different languages." Paddington was most impressed. "Thank you very much," he said. "I'd like one in Peruvian, please." "Peruvian?" repeated the man. "I'm afraid we don't get much call for that." "You don't get much call for it?" exclaimed Paddington. "Everybody speaks it in darkest Peru. You don't even have to call out." He gave the man a hard stare. "Wait here," said the inspector nervously. "I'll see what I can do." No sooner had the inspector disappeared than Paddington saw a crowd approaching, so he raised Mrs. Bird's umbrella in case he had a job finding him again. "I'm sorry we're late," panted the leader of the group. "We got held up." Paddington politely raised his hat. "That's all right," he began. "We can't all be early birds. I'm forming a queue." Before he had time to say any more, he found himself being pushed to one side as there was a mad scramble to board the bus. Paddington watched in dismay as everyone on the top deck began fighting for the front seats. "I wouldn't sit there if I were you," he called. "There may still be some worms." But he was wasting his breath, so he tried again. "Excuse me," he called. Lifting one leg, he waved the umbrella. "It's a hop-on bus, and I'm afraid the 2 front seats upstairs are reserved." "Hold it, you guys!" The leader gave a loud blast on his whistle. "You're supposed to hop everywhere, okay? Pass it down the line." "What happens now?" came a voice when everyone was settled. Paddington considered the matter for a moment. "I'm not sure," he replied. "I shall need to ask Mr. Gruber, but I think you look at the view and then you hop off again." "View?" wailed someone. "What view?" Their voices were lost in the general commotion as the leader blew several more blasts on his whistle and issued fresh instructions. "I came on this trip to see the sights," protested a lady as she staggered off the bus. "Not become one." "I'm worn out," gasped another, collapsing into her husband's arms. "And we haven't been anywhere yet." A number of passers-by stopped to watch, and several children joined in the fun. Soon the whole pavement was alive with figures. Paddington tried closing his eyes, but whenever he opened them, more people had arrived. He was very relieved when he spied a familiar figure pushing his way through the crowds towards him. "Are you all right, Mr. Brown?" called Mr. Gruber. "This place looks like a battlefield." "It feels like one, Mr. Gruber," said Paddington. "I was trying to save our seats in the front row, but I'm afraid I wasn't quick enough." "The inspector gave me this booklet," said Mr. Gruber. "He said he's very sorry it's in English, but he suggested we find somewhere quiet to read it until the fuss had died down. There's a little cafe over there. I'll hurry on ahead and reserve a table." Mr. Gruber hadn't gone very far before Paddington felt a spot of rain on the end of his nose, so he stopped to open the umbrella. Almost immediately, he heard a whistle and a voice shouting, "Follow him, you guys! Don't let him out of your sight!" Paddington hurried on his way as fast as his legs would carry him. Even so, he only just managed to reach the cafe ahead of the others. "Quick, Mr. Brown," hissed a voice from behind some potted plants. "Over here. There's some cocoa on its way." "I should be careful with your sips, Mr. Brown," warned Mr. Gruber as the waitress arrived with 2 steaming mugs. "It looks very hot, and they may give the game away." "I don't know about my sips, Mr. Gruber," gasped Paddington as the crowd burst through the door. "I'm beginning to wish I brought my disguise outfit." "There you are," cried the leader. "I've never known a tour captain so hard to keep up with." "Tour captain?" repeated Paddington. "You were holding up your umbrella," said the man. "That's what tour captains do. It's so that people don't get lost." "I'm not a tour captain," said Paddington hotly. "I'm a bear." The crowd fell silent as they took in the news. "You mean we've been doing all that hopping around for nothing?" complained one of the party. "I thought it was some quaint old English custom." "What are we going to do now?" cried someone else. "We've missed our bus." Paddington looked out of the window at the rain and then at his booklet. "I think I've got an idea coming on," he announced. After explaining what he had in mind, he waited for the others to settle down. Then, while Mr. Gruber held up his pictures one by one, Paddington read from the booklet. If the words didn't always match up with the pictures, no one seemed to mind, and at the end, as the sun came out again, they all applauded. "That was the best tour I've never been on," said someone, amid general agreement. "I didn't know Buckingham Palace was over 60 metres high," said a lady as the party began to leave. "I'm afraid it got mixed up with Nelson's column by mistake," explained Paddington. "It's a bit difficult with paws, and I must have turned over 2 pages at once." "Never mind," said a man. "The exercise has done us all good. I haven't felt so fit in years." And to show how pleased they were, everyone dropped a coin or 2 into Paddington's umbrella as they went past. "Well," said Mr. Gruber, when it was all quiet again, "what do you think of that, Mr. Brown?" "I think," said Paddington, "I might become a tour captain when I'm old enough. It seems a very good job for a rainy day, especially if you have your own umbrella." The end.